And good morning, everybody. You're very welcome to the Guaranteed Irish Construction Forum for 2021, titled Rebuilding Ireland While Sustaining Local Businesses. Rita O'Connell here from Guaranteed Irish, and we're delighted to have nearly 80 people registered for the webinar this morning. So as people join and log on, allow me to introduce our panel. Speaking this morning, we have Paddy Kelly, Managing Director of ETEX Ireland and Chairperson of Guaranteed Irish, Tara Flynn, Director of Paul Flynn Construction, Paul Camden, CEO of United Hardware, Danny Carney, Director of Technical Marketing in Extratherm, and I'll MC for the morning. Again, as usual, we take questions and answers at the end of the session, so please do submit them and we'll go through them at the end. We've a nice piece in this morning where the Minister addresses you in relation to the Housing for All plan. But first of all, allow me to introduce the speakers. As you know, most of you, Paddy is the Managing Director of Tegwell, now ETEX Ireland. And throughout his time in ETEX, Paddy has also been the Chairman of Octobelt, Chairman of the Building Materials Federation, President of the Hardware Association and President of the European Federation for Fibre Cement Manufacturers. For his sins, Paddy is also the Chairman of Guaranteed Irish, so kept busy. Delighted to have you all on board, and of course you know Paddy throughout his lengthy career in the construction sector. Tara Flynn, who's a director with Paul Flynn Construction, is very welcome, and we're delighted that she's here in the capacity as chairperson of the Construction Industry Federation Western Region and Senior Vice President of MBCA. Businesswoman and mother of four, Tara has been involved in the construction sector for over 25 years, playing a key role in the development and modernisation of family company Paul Flynn Construction, established by her father in the 70s. As the driving force behind the company's business development, finances and tendering, Tara has become heavily engaged in the Construction Industry Federation and was elected as the first female chairperson of the Construction Industry Federation Galway branch a few years ago. So Tara, we're delighted to have you on board and looking forward to all your insights for the small and medium business in the construction sector in particularly. Paul Camden, you know well as well through United Hardware. He's the CEO there and has been for some time. United Hardware is a leading buying and marketing group for builders and merchants, DIY, home and garden and retail stores, and services over 150 stores throughout Ireland. Prior to United Hardware, Paul was Managing Director with Bunzl, and he's a Chartered Director and Non-Executive Chairman of Esmark Finch and a Director in the Hardware Association of Ireland and Board Member of the Chartered Institute of Personnel. Do you know how you get time to do your job at all there, Paul? You're so involved in so many things, but delighted to have you, and as a Guaranteed Irish member, we're looking forward to your insights where your fingers are in so many of the local pies. I think that's important. Danny Carney, Director of Technical and Marketing in Extratherm, is very welcome. He's there with them over 30 years, and he is part of that driving team, driving Extratherm net zero operation by 2030. We're currently developing resources and goals to meet the REBA climate challenge in 2030. That's a target for both operating energy and embodied carbon. Extratherm have adopted the line of learn, improve, change, indicating their commitment to collaborate with industry partners to improve sustainability in the construction sector. Delighted to have you, Danny, in terms of another Guaranteed Irish member pushing for net zero, so well done. Just to start the morning, we've been fortunate enough that the Minister has engaged with us. He wasn't able to make it this morning himself, but he has produced this video where he wants to talk to the various different members of our group, and we'll just play a minute, and based on that video, going the decarbonisation space that we all need to get to, we'll have a discussion on that in relation that we're going to cover this morning. So you might just play that.
On behalf of the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage and myself, I want to thank the Guaranteed Irish Construction Forum for allowing me the opportunity to speak to members here today. We probably all feel a bit exhausted at this stage by the uncertainty that surrounds us, the COVID impacts, the Brexit impacts, climate change impacts, and the impacts of strained international relationships and fractured global supply chains. Sometimes it feels like we're all standing and indeed building on shifting sands. That is why the importance of this forum and the stability that it brings to the construction sector in terms of reliability and sustainability, and indeed strengthening the Irish supply chain, cannot and should not be understated. My department and I rightly regard the members of the Guaranteed Irish Construction Forum as really key partners in helping deliver on the construction targets and actions set out by the government over the next decade in order to develop a sustainable housing sector in this country. As no doubt you're all aware, we unveiled those targets earlier this month when I launched Housing for All, the most ambitious housing plan in the history of the state, which sets out 213 actions and is backed up for the first time by a financial commitment in excess of over €4 billion per annum. And with that, over 300,000 new homes will be built by the end of 2030, including a projected 90,000 social and 36,000 affordable purchase homes, and on top of that 18,000 cost rental homes for the very first time. It's the largest state-led building programme in our history, and that's before mentioning the planned retrofit of 500,000 existing homes by 2030. Our vision for Ireland's housing system over the longer term is to have a pipeline of housing supply built in the right locations with economic, social and environmental sustainability built in. But the government alone can't make this happen, and this is why and where organisations like Guaranteed Irish Construction Forum and its members have to play their part. To build capacity to deliver 33,000 NZ buildings annually, Ireland needs a competitive, dynamic and sustainable construction sector that can deliver high quality physical infrastructure as well. The sector needs to introduce modern technology construction methods also. It needs to transition to a low carbon and climate resilient sector, and it needs to increase the appeal for younger generations to actually join the construction sector in the first place. Delivering 33,000 plus homes each year will require an expansion of the current workforce from around 40,000 full-time equivalent workers to 67,500 workers by the middle of the decade, and possibly up to 80,000 workers may be necessary to address any backlog of housing that housing has built up. The plan contains an ambitious commitment to increase apprenticeship registration to 10,000 per annum, almost double the 2020 intake. Furthermore, the cost of residential construction will be a specific focus with a view to identifying and implementing cost reductions. The government will advance methods to reduce construction costs by focusing on the residential construction sector. In this regard, we intend to enhance the role of the new Construction Technology Centre, which is under development, in order to prioritise residential construction for its first 3 years of operation. The centre will help to provide the structures and funding to enable innovation in residential construction. It will play a proactive role in strengthening the residential construction value chain. It will help promote and develop innovation and modern methods of construction using digital and manufacturing technology, and it will support SMEs to develop scale and to adapt modern methods of construction and building information modelling techniques. Also of importance will be increased focus for the reform-led construction sector group on residential construction. This will include the introduction and implementation of a pipeline of cost-reducing and productivity measures in order to control price inflation. The work of both the Construction Technology Centre and the Construction Sector Group will be led and funded centrally by the state, but industry partners will also contribute funding and be involved at all stages of the process. Other key aspects include reducing costs by reducing construction and demolition waste costs through the introduction of an exemption for C&D waste, while government departments will also work together to strengthen the supply chain by securing EU-level strategic value chain priority status for NZ construction. Housing for All will also ensure that the construction sector operates to the highest standard. Among the actions to improve the quality of the built environment and embedded compliance in the sector, the government is committed to establishing registers of competent builders and construction professionals by placing the Construction Industry Register Ireland on a statutory footing. These registers will provide consumers with an assurance that all listed builders, contractors and tradespersons have met all registration requirements. Despite the instabilities of the pandemic, Brexit and other variables, what we can be certain of is the government's clear and sustainable vision in progressing these major reforms that will accelerate and increase the supply of housing. The housing system may be complex, but we have the solutions, the ability, the drive and a radical plan that will make a real difference, backed by real money. There is no doubt that the business is there, the demand is there, and with clear housing needs forecasts and clear government targets, the Irish construction sector is and will continue to be a fully supported, sustainable sector.
I suppose the big question and the topics that we're trying to cover this morning include areas on the area of sustainability, in terms of the Housing for All plan, the supply chain and recruitment. And we are very, they're big topics that we really need to discuss. So Patty, I'm going to come to you first, I suppose, in relation to your business with eTex Ireland, in terms of the Housing for All plan. What does it mean in terms of the construction industry for Ireland? How can we deliver it? It's very ambitious.
First of all, I think it's good that there is a plan. If we don't have a plan, we've nothing to work to. So it is important that there's a plan, but the most important thing is that there's follow-up to the actions that are in the plan. We have aspirations in the plan to build 30,000 to 35,000 houses. They are needed, there's no doubt about that. And it will be very good for our industry if we can provide this number of houses. I think for me, it's been a long time coming. We've been promised housing is going to increase for a number of years. I think if you look year on year in the calendar year, I think we're at about 27,000 houses now. So we are beginning to get there, and we can feel it. The companies that are in the manufacturing area, we can feel it in our sales. So everyone is having quite a good year because of it. But it needs to be sustained, and it needs to get the full weight of the government behind it. And it'll be interesting to hear what Tara has to say from the CIF's point of view. But I think as manufacturers and as a supply chain, there will be challenges in there at the moment because of Brexit and other challenges throughout the world to make sure that we're able to supply. But I think it's the most important thing is that there's a plan to build 30,000 to 35,000 houses in Ireland because they are required.
Okay, so Tara, I'm going to come to you, make sure you're off mic. In terms of the SMEs, for the small and medium builder, what impact will that plan have on your sector?
We certainly welcome the plan. It's a positive document. It provides certainty for our industry. As it's alluded in the plan there will be a 4 billion guaranteed every year for the next 5 years. And that's part of the 10-year overall plan. This year, we plan on building up close to 20,000 units, but keeping in mind this will be done over a 9-month period because unfortunately our industry was closed for about 3 months due to the pandemic. So in 2022, we expect to deliver in the region of 26,000 to 27,000 homes, and this will grow to a region of maybe 33,000 in 2024. The renovation works to our existing buildings is key to Ireland's climate strategy. And we welcome this significant works because this will help our thousands of SMEs. We also welcome the continuation of the Help to Buy scheme and the shared equity scheme, and this will work favourably for our SMEs. But it is noted the industry can deliver. We have the speed, we have the efficiency, but there are areas of concern that are hindering our progression. Number one is planning. Planning has taken too long. It needs review, it needs reform. Infrastructure. It is imperative that we get a proper infrastructure in place, i.e. transport, water, waste. Now hopefully this will be evident when the National Development Plan is launched in early October. This was also highlighted significantly in the CIF pre-budget submission, and also I read an interesting article on the Times this morning there where our CIF Director General Tom Parlin has alluded to the same issues. So if we bring efficiency, certainty to planning, zoning and infrastructure, it will promote greater delivery to all sectors in our construction area. Thank you.
Okay, so in terms of the delivery then, Paul, everybody's talking about labour shortages and some people are mooting, the PUP payment as we call it. Is it an issue for construction? I think we all know it is, but what are we going to do about it and how are we going to address it?
Yeah, good morning, Breed. Labour shortages are a big issue and, being muted ongoing. So look, it is fantastic to see that we have a plan, but in that plan, we've got to address some of the significant barriers that exist, and labour shortages is an ongoing one. So the pandemic disruption has really compounded this issue. We've large numbers of construction workers go home to their own countries while Ireland was shut down. And now we see a situation where UK firms are actively recruiting construction workers in Ireland, offering flights and benefits and so on to travel over and back weekly to the UK. We had an established workforce in Ireland, and unfortunately, the pandemic and that has caused issues to that. And we now need to attract these employees back, which is taking time. It's very costly. We're hearing this on the ground all the time that we just can't get enough bricklayers, carpenters, plumbers, plasters, etc. So it's a real barrier to scaling up and a significant issue for subcontractors. Like the other thing to point out, and which is staggering, is that there's still 10,000 construction workers on the PUP, which is a huge issue while everybody is out there recruiting and complaining about not being able to get staff to complete jobs or to start jobs. So we need to understand this and what's going on, and we've called for an ending of the PUP as soon as possible for construction. So if we're going to build over 30,000 houses each year in Ireland, we do require an additional 27,000 employees. And as such, government needs to put together schemes to attract people to the trades and attract labour from areas like Eastern Europe or South America, because we will not be able to fulfil the demand that is going to come from constructing 30,000 houses a year. There are other barriers. The high cost of living and accommodation shortages in Ireland are making it unattractive. So it is a real problem out there. And I was speaking to one merchant yesterday who knows of a bricklayer who's now seeking, say, 250 per block, which is just not sustainable. We also are hearing on the ground lots of things around people working in I suppose, the black market, looking for cash, etc., to do work. So look, prior to the pandemic, I mean, the construction sector was hindered by shortage. Now that we're coming out of the pandemic, we're even more hindered by it. And on top of the fact that we've got to build extensively and rapidly to meet our housing demands. So it's very likely that a cohort as well of workers are unlikely to return to their previous jobs. So in the short and medium term, so maybe we need to look at reskilling and adapting to the country's needs and the economy. And I think it's interesting, the HAI, Hardware Association of Ireland, have an important proposal in their budget submission calling for double deduction on tax for training for companies to upskill and train staff in the renewal of clean products for construction. So that's the kind of initiative that we need to look at. The other schemes are the apprentice scheme. More than half of all registered apprentices are waiting to progress to the next phase of their training due to the pandemic, due to COVID. So we've got a situation in Ireland where about 10,000 apprentices are now stuck on waiting lists, unable to access the job training, the training centres, etc., that have been closed for the past 14 or 15 months and so on. So craft apprenticeships like plumbers, electricians are worst effective, which are effectively losing a year and a half in this valuable time that they need to progress. So if we're going to solve our housing crisis, we require more people to build them. And currently, we've very little in place at the moment to attract and retain skilled workers. And I really think this is a big barrier that needs to be addressed. And that, coupled with very significant investment in education, training, and in the apprentice programs, is essential to see this happening at pace to fulfill our demands.
And before I go on to the next question, Paul, you mentioned €2.50 for a block versus what was it?
About €1, maybe €20, €25. So everything is going up. I mean, people are looking for exorbitant rates, and that is a supply and demand situation. So there is a real scarcity out there. The construction sector and projects that are going on, and everybody investing in their homes and their gardens and so on, is fueling the demand. But this demand is not going to be met unless we have the people who can actually carry out the work. Where there's a shortage, we're going to see wage inflation, and that's happening fairly rapidly out there, which is going to have a big knock-on effect in cost of building.
So in terms of managing costs, are you telling me the simple, one of the fast, quick wins would be to take the PUP off the construction sector and to eliminate, if you like, to some degree, the black market and the cash payment, and get those people back into the workforce?
100%, Breed. I mean, with 10,000 still on the PUP, like, you'd have to ask the question as to why are they still there when we have a huge need? I myself was talking to a painting contractor about a week ago who said that they can't tender and price for large painting contract jobs at the moment, like a full block of apartments or something. So I asked him why, and he said, well, I can't get anybody to work with me anymore. And I said, why? And he says, well, they're all on the pup. Why would they come to work? They're on the pup at home, or they're on the pup and doing some maybe light domestic painting jobs and so on that they can pick up. So this is an issue, and we really need to kind of understand that and how long this will go on. There's a massive demand in construction at the moment. So why do we have to have a PUP payment in place for construction workers? That needs to be answered.
And another question I'm asking you for clarity, so we're fully understanding the situation. If those 10,000 tradespeople who are in the middle of their apprenticeships were released to go back in and qualify, would that also bring back another 10,000 into the marketplace?
Well, it certainly would. It's going to release more people into apprenticeships and to be working each year. If we have a stop on that, a pause that we've had for 18 months because of the pandemic and so on, it's just delaying us. We need these workers coming into the system on an ongoing basis, because naturally there are people dropping out the other end due to retirement or whatever reason, they're changing career. So we need these apprentices flowing through the system. So urgently needs to get the training centres opened and the apprentices working through their programs as fast as they can, so that they will meet the needs that have been pointed out over the next couple of years to get Ireland into the position of sorting this housing crisis that we have.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Paul, for those insights. I want to come back to some of them at the moment. But one of the points you're after making is in relation to making the area of construction and working in that sector exciting, and maybe the possibility of a rebrand and repositioning it. So amongst young people, it's a real offering as opposed to something you do if you don't get into university. And that's been a big debate in Ireland for a long, long time. And one of those key areas that's becoming really increasingly popular is the whole area of sustainability. And Danny, I want to come to you on that. Can you define sustainability in terms of construction? What is it and how is it measured? And how can we use it to attract young people into this sector that we really need support on?
Yeah, I think you're right, folks. There's an awful lot of bumps in the road to bring Ireland back to a healthy construction sector. But I also believe that the solutions to these issues need to keep sustainability at the forefront, because we need to be seen as being progressive in building a more sustainable future, and certainly a more sustainable mindset will attract younger people into our business. Each of our businesses are going to start looking at how we can become more sustainable in everything that we do, and we have to attract the younger people in who see a future in our businesses. So sustainable construction, what is it? Thus far under the building regulations, the regulations have concentrated on reducing the amount of energy that we use in our buildings once they are built. So, we're actually at the stage where we're at nearly zero energy buildings now. Some people work towards passive construction that has a lot of advantages when it comes to quality of construction. So we know what to do in operational energy wise. But more and more, we are looking at the amount of carbon that is actually expended during the construction, the materials that we use, and then the operation and the maintenance of the buildings. And as our buildings get ever more energy efficient, the amount of carbon drops, because we're heating our water, we're heating our homes with more energy efficient fuels and cleaner fuels. The amount of carbon used in our materials is going up. And so the proportion is growing in the actual methodology on how we build. So a number of countries like Denmark, and I know that the Irish Irish Green Building Council and the RIAI are looking to bring embodied carbon into the building regulations, and this is going to come down the road to us pretty quickly. So there are targets now set for what is seen as a sustainable building when it comes to operational energy. It's an A-rated building, but also the amount of carbon that's expended in the construction. And both the RIAI are working on setting those targets, but REBA in the UK have set the target at 600 kilograms approximately of CO2 equivalent for every square metre of floor, and the Letty Initiative have done that as well. And what they've done that as a direct response to the climate emergency that's happening. And I think that Irish construction will be able to meet those challenges as a group, right through from manufacturers through to the supply chain and into the guys on site. And our young people are going to be pushing us for that.
Patty, in terms of the sustainability issue, how important then does it remain in terms of supporting local buying, local, and getting in to support those local building suppliers and manufacturers?
The first thing I would say, and I know from my time on the BMF, all the major building manufacturers, whether Wavin, Kingspan, Extra Term, CRH, Saint-Gobain, Etex, all of those big manufacturers all have one goal, and that is to reduce their CO2 footprint. And everything they do now today is about reducing that and making their products more sustainable. So that's on the manufacturing side, that's a good start. And I actually think that by doing that, we will actually attract people into our industries, because young people today want to make a difference, and sustainability is one of the differences where they can make it. But I also think there's a lot of work being done on the design of buildings with the architects and engineers who are trying to design buildings that are carbon neutral as well, and therefore they want to use products that are close to carbon neutral, and therefore that brings in the whole circular economy. And with the Guaranteed Irish House that we're promoting, Breed, what we're promoting is using local materials as much as possible. Obviously, we don't want everything to be designed with local products. It would mean that architects would be constrained in how they can design their buildings. But where we're saying where possible, they should use products that are made in Ireland and products from companies who are producing products that can be recycled, and not just looking at how the building is going to look, but look at how the building is going to end up in 50 years' time, that it can be deconstructed and the products then recycled and reused again and go back into the marketplace. And I think that's the real sustainability for me, when you have products that can do that.
Yeah, and I think it's important as well, because the desire, and we see it in Guaranteed Irish, the desire from architects has really increased now that there's an awareness and a listing on guaranteedirishhouse.ie as a portal, purely as a listing, a digital listing, to get people to supply and go to check out the local supplier first, and all things being equal, to try and keep the business there, because they're trying to get to their NZ housing and their specified list of materials as well. So I think there is a desire to do that. So we'd encourage everybody to try and jump on that bandwagon. But that's only one little thing. There's just so much more in the area of sustainability, as Danny alluded to. And it's something that I suppose everybody's under pressure on, and we're really trying to drive that through Guaranteed Irish, particularly the construction sector as well, the whole local piece, and shortening the supply chains. In terms, Tara, then, if I can come to you and make sure you're off mute, does the Irish construction sector have the capacity to fulfil the needs of the housing for all plan? Because I noticed there when Paul was talking about the need for the 30,000 houses, he needed 27,000 extra employees. So if you took the 10,000 off Pope and got the 10,000 apprentices out of the hole that they're in, we'd have some chance. How are you managing at the moment? It must be so difficult for the construction sector to really make this happen, and it must be so frustrating when you're out there knowing it's got to be done and there's business to be won, but you can't meet the needs. Where are you at on that?
Yeah, thanks, Breed. Yeah, look, there certainly is an issue when it comes to the lack of manpower, but the industry has the capacity, it has the ability, and we've proven that over the last year and a half when we were locked down, and we do have the resilience within the sector. In terms of tendering for projects, and then when you go live on a job, it is quite disheartening sometimes, like was mentioned there, trying to get a block layer, and the block layer coming in at 250, 280, 290 a block. But look, you just have to keep going. The ability is there within the industry, but it's just, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. But it's important to know that all sectors are currently challenged at the moment, and they are seeking personnel, and it's mirrored across Europe. It's not just in Ireland. So within the industry here in Ireland, we're constantly trying to promote and upscale and rescale the construction sector. So as part of the CIF, they have a manpower and training committee. And within that, they try to develop new programs to encourage entry into the industry. So, for example, you've got apprenticeships, which was mentioned earlier by Paul, traineeships, etc. We've also got a very good construction professional skill net, which offers a wide range of courses for everyone within the industry, let alone the springboards. They offer a range of courses which are 90% state funded. So when you've got all that together, that should encourage people back to upskill and to retrain. Also, as well, within the CIF, we've got a careers campaign. We launched that last year, which was very positive. And this is brought out throughout all local secondary schools, well, nationally to secondary schools, is trying to encourage students to take up construction courses within the CAO system, or indeed your apprenticeship courses. Now, there is a need for the government to work with us on this. The CIF have been lobbying for a change for the apprenticeship model. So hopefully the department will work with us on that and we'll be able to kind of drive forward. We have the skills. We do need to build on them a little bit. We have the craft workers. So if we just drive it on, we'll be able to deliver. And collaboration is key, really, when it comes down to this.
And speaking of collaboration there, Tara, in terms of the material manufacturers, Danny, like what does sustainability mean there? How are you working within the industry and within the trade?
Well, I think manufacturers, merchants, everybody is now trying to look at where they stand themselves. How sustainable are we as a company? So at the minute that there's blasting going on the roof here, we were putting PVs on the roof that supply 25% of our energy requirements. Doing that lowers our own footprint, which eventually is seen through a better environmental product declaration for our products. Now you have to add that into a concrete block, and Flynn's will have to build it into a house, and we will all, with those gradual improvements over the next 5 or even 10 years, we will end up with a more sustainable construction. And again, I put it back, and unless we are on this journey of providing sustainable evidence to our customers and to our future employees, we're not going to go very far. We need to be very active there. And I think the inroads that the Irish construction have made in providing homes and houses that do actually meet the higher standards of European performances when it comes to energy rating, I think we'll be able to do it in sustainability as well. And I think an awful lot of it, as Paddy says, it's buying local. It's the builders, merchants stocking the materials that have proven EPDs in the yard that people are able to take and build a more sustainable building. So yeah, we need to work together as an industry.
And I suppose you're right. If we actually can turn the ship around, we could start to see the domino effect fairly quickly. Everybody has to jump in together. Tara, in terms, or Paul, I should ask maybe, there has been a shortage of native timber. Now we represent particularly the Glennon brothers up in the Midlands, who are well-known timber providers. They're frustrated to the hilt in terms of trying to get licenses for felling trees, and we're really supportive of those. They seem to be held up. What's going on? We're growing all these trees. We've this amazing Quilcha organisation within the country who are doing their very best in terms of both sustainability and growing local and supplying local. And yet we can't seem to fell trees and support and provide timber and wood for our builders. And, Ireland is famous for its forestry. So what are we doing? And we're bringing in the imports. What's going on there? Tell us a little bit about what's going on.
Okay, this has been going on for a while, this issue. And I feel very sorry for the Glennon brothers and all of the big sawmills in Ireland that are dealing with this issue. Yeah, so okay, yeah, this is a big issue. I mean, the matter is not resolved, and the issue is that the country needs 6,000 felling licenses each year, but the departments can only clear about 4,000. So we also, on top of that, due to the pandemic, again, we have a backlog of about 5,000 into the system in the Department of Agriculture. Now, they have been working hard, in fairness to them, and output has increased recently, but it's not near sufficient to deal with this problem, right? So the knock-on effect is massive, right? What is the knock-on effect? Well, we've got the forests out there not being felled. We've got Irish timber is not being used in construction, and we have the sawmills importing timber from other countries, predominantly Scotland, which is costly, takes longer, not as sustainable as using our own. We have the farmers who planted the trees hoping decades ago and now want them harvested and earn money from them. The situation wouldn't have arisen, though, this wouldn't have arisen if the forestry license crisis and failure of the Department of Agriculture to get on top of the issue, and if they had planned this properly, resourced it properly, this wouldn't be an issue. This is just crazy stuff. So really, the entire system, though, as I understand it, is crumbling and impacting on construction and jobs, etc. And an entire new system is needed, because at this point in time, every process in the whole timber and felling sector needs a license, meaning that it's very slow and very bureaucratic. And obviously we need to use more timber. Timber is a great product and a key product in terms of a key category for building. And also from a sustainable point of view, it's better in terms of its carbon footprints than concrete, steel, etc. So there's no point in us announcing billions of euro investments in new housing for all plans when the basic rudimentary bureaucratic issues are not resolved. So government urgently need to resource the Department of Agriculture to speed up this process, and at the same time they need to completely overhaul this outdated system and sort it out. This is a mess of our own making that we have to sort out very, very quickly.
So again, another quick fix really out of today. So to highlight that, and maybe that's something we'll bring back to the Minister. Tara, in terms of the lack of supply then, so wood included and a whole host of other materials and increased costs, how has that affected your company and other companies in your same space, same size?
Yeah, well, Reach, thankfully at the minute, our own company, Flynn Construction, we're busy. We have a lot of work on. Certainly the lack of manpower, the shortage of subcontractors, and the continued increased material prices does dictate the level of where you're going. But also, I suppose, as was mentioned earlier by Paul, the pandemic, the PUP payment, that is having a slight bearing. Thankfully, it was at 80,000 at the peak, and now it's gone down to under 10,000. So hopefully that'll keep going down. But look, the industry needs certainty, and with certainty, we can control and make the best business decisions. So here at Flynn Construction, we find that when you collaborate with your clients, with your design team, with the guys on the ground, then you can overcome these obstacles that come your way, such as the continued material price increases. We are certainly in unprecedented times. That is a given. Like a lot of our contractors, we've entered into government works. So when you factor in, again, the labour shortages, etc., that does pose a serious problem. So therefore, I today am strongly urging and believe that we need a serious overhaul when it comes to the government form of contract. I know I'm slightly going off the rail here, but this will give a cushion not only to the builders, but to the clients. So there's a few bits in there, Breach.
So when you say you're looking for a push for a change of form of contract, what are you looking for precisely?
Well, look, it's been, I suppose, in terms of our own company, we built a lot of schools, and when you price a job, your price is locked into a contract. As I said there, we're certainly in unprecedented times. So obviously, with all the increases there, your costs are going up. And we didn't foresee this. Going back to the block layers price, again, it was 180, 190. Therefore, this guy's coming in at 250, even €3 a block. So we need the government to work with us on this. There is a slight opening. They are beginning to realise now, yes, there is a problem. So hopefully, and I suppose, unfortunately, the government had to realise the hard way. So therefore now they're listening to us now that we are in unprecedented times. So hopefully it'll open up the line of communications for the government form of contract to be reviewed.
So just for clarity, Tara, for anyone listening who's not in the construction sector as deep as you are, you're saying by the time you do your contract, you sign it up at a certain rate, that everything changes in the meantime by the time you actually get going, and the prices are unsustainable for you to complete the work. So you need a bit of, I suppose, flexibility there to work with on the government. And while they can't have an open purse, there needs to be some way that you can re-enter into negotiations following something major happening, such as a global pandemic, etc.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Yeah. We're not for free for all, but we just need government to have an element there within the government form of contract where it can be negotiated.
And I suppose it's managing that from their side that's going to be the challenge, but there must be solutions out there in this day and age. Paul, I want to come back to you again. In terms of the supply chain, Paul, do you see a returning to normal over the next few months after this turbulent period? Or are we in a pickle? Because we're looking at what's happening in the UK with petrol, etc., and people queuing, and it's not good over there. It's not a pretty. How are we going to manage here in our own supply chain, and how can we, I'm a big advocate of short supply chains and supporting local, and that keeps the jobs and the communities alive. But how are we going to actually manage to fulfill what we need to do?
Yeah, Breed, it's a big issue. This is a perfect storm. I mean, the pandemic has, knocked supply chains completely apart to the absolute bits, and has a big effect on the construction sector. And that combined with Brexit has presented a massive challenge. Now that we see recovery, getting underway, the construction sector wants to gear up, scale up and step up and serve as one of the engines for economic growth, okay? However, many of the construction markets globally have seen this increase in demand. So when it all comes together, it's just going to create a massive shortage, not just on the labor issues that we've been talking about, but actually raw materials. So, the global shortages we've seen global shortages of almost every raw material that is needed in construction. Record timber prices, record shipping and container costs, with containers from China now being quoted at sort of 20,000 euro. So if you think about that, and you think about building material that you may have to import from China, and you used to pay, 2,500, and now you're paying 20,000 for a container, even if you can get on board a ship. I mean, that's a massive issue and an increase. And that could be something as basic for us as wheelbarrows needed for our construction industry. And the value of a container of wheelbarrows might be 15 to 18,000 euro, and then you've got to put 20,000 euro in terms of container shipping costs on top of that. It just makes it unsustainable. So these are the kind of issues that we're facing in the supply chain, as well as the shortages. But if you think about what's after happening with all of the shortages and the price increases, the average material cost for projects now has reportedly gone up by about 13 to 14%. So this increase then knocks on into the purchase price of houses. So like a house from 325 to 350,000 is gone up between 15 to 25,000 euro. So how is that going to impact on people trying to get mortgages, people trying to deal with contractual obligations and so on? So on the ground, we're starting to hear about things like extensions, attic conversions, energy refitting programs being cancelled or postponed. People are just putting off jobs and holding off. We also are hearing of contractors pulling out of jobs. So they're saying basically, I can't do this job for the price that we negotiated previously. We have to renegotiate the price on that, so they are not able to make their margin. So these inflationary costs and these issues within the supply chain, they're just going to limit our ability to grow, limit people's ability at a personal level to get the mortgage that they require to buy the new house or to refit or extend their existing house. So there are good indications. There are some improvements happening. So I mean, there's a very interesting report from Turner and Townsend. It's a kind of a global survey that they did after COVID-19 restrictions. They are saying that like the impact of the pandemic will be long lasting and so on, and we will face challenges, but that they are looking at pressures easing and over the next 12 months. So I suppose that will feed into an improvement in price inflation issues, which is kind of running at maybe 9 to 12% on tender increases. And that would be slowing down in 2022 to maybe 3 to 4%, and then further slowing in 2023. So it's going to be a gradual improvement in the supply chain, a gradual improvement in the availability of raw materials, a gradual reduction in the price inflation and so on. Not fantastic news. It's certainly not going to change overnight and so on, We are, though, definitely seeing some areas coming back, like where there were shortages on key products like insulation and so on. The market seems to rebound and so on. Timber still remains an issue, quite a big issue, and we are concerned about that. But we also need to look at our dependency as well on foreign supply chains and see what we can do looking closer to home in Ireland. Again, under Guaranteed Irish, is there an opportunity to buy more locally? Can we manufacture more locally? Do we have to be so dependent on international supply chains to meet our construction needs? And particularly with the sustainable agenda as well, what can we do locally? So I would say, in summary, it's still going to remain turbulent. We've had that perfect storm. It's going to be a slow easing out. You know, the shipping and container costs are really impacting on import, and we're going to see that right across all sectors through Christmas this year. I'm hearing other sectors like toys and so on are going to be well affected by shortages, as well as the construction sector. So a slow easing out, but hopefully we'll resume back to normal maybe mid-2022 or towards the back end of 2022.
So if we're really in a realistic holding place here until 23, it's a real opportunity for the local supply chain that I keep harboring on about. And I think the whole area of sustainability is here to stay. We've no choice but to adapt it with the way the world is going. Danny, can I come to you on that? Do you think the sustainability drive will change the way that we're all going to build going forward in terms of meeting the demands of the cost, meeting the demands of the desire for sustainable and NZ carbon properties? Where are we going in that direction at this point in time?
Yeah, well, we've seen a change and a search for different methods of construction to act as a solution for a number of the issues that were just as, you know, our shortages of labour, the speed of the build, and the sustainability of the products being used. But as Paul alluded to earlier on, we know that timber is a fine material to build with, but if it's local, because as I said earlier, every product that we get will have a performance declaration in terms of environmental credentials. So the stuff coming from Glen and Timber is going to be a hell of a bit greener than stuff coming in from Scandinavia or even Scotland. So, you know, actually calculating properly the amount of carbon that's being used in construction and the competencies in doing that is very important. And that's where Tara and the guys at the CIF are going to be playing a big part in upskilling people to work on sites and to relations correctly as well. I think that to avoid greenwash, that we will need to have someone accrediting the claims of the Irish construction sector. So Extratherm will be third-party accredited for the environmental credentials of our products, and we need to have the backup of government to provide that third-party certification. I think that is going to be a big hold-up. We know there's massive backlogs at the moment in getting certification, and I think the guys, particularly in the civil service, need to get back to work. They need to be supporting Irish construction to allow us not only to provide for the needs here in Ireland, but even further afield.
Well, now I'd have to stop you here. The civil servants will say they are back at work. They're just based from home, so we need to just check that there. They are at work.
Well, let's say productivity needs to be improved if that is the case, you know. So I would say, but back into the actual, you know, methods of build, there's many ways of skinning a cat, you know. So we just need to see. Let's see what the most sustainable way of building actually is. Let's measure it and let's reach the targets that are out there that the RIAI and Irish Green Building Council are working on. And let's encourage Irish manufacturers to become more sustainable in what we're doing. And I think we can be as good as anywhere, you know.
Oh, brilliant. I have quite a lot of questions. So very quickly, I have two more questions to put to you. One to you, Paddy. How can we increase the appeal for younger generations to join the construction sector? There's a bit of work that needs to be done here.
Yeah, it's a question that when I was involved in the Hardware Association, we actually spent a lot of time looking at, and companies, you know, different companies have done different things. I know Grafton, Chadwick's group have opened an academy, so they're encouraging their staff to develop themselves within the industry. And I think more have to do that. The Hardware Association have come up with a lot of courses to develop their people. And I think the first thing we should do is look at retention. You know, we have to keep the people who are already in the industry interested. We have to make them love their jobs, because they will tell their peers. And, you know, so when you get a young person in, we need to make sure we keep them in, and that they're saying, I have a fantastic job in the construction industry, whether it's in a manufacturer or in the supply chain. And at the last Dr. Build Awards, we actually introduced an award for young people. And we had 12 young people from around the country. And one of them was given a special award for their efforts. And this is the type of thing we have to do to make the job more interesting, because if we don't do that, you know, the likes of Intel, the Hewlett-Packard's, the chemical areas, all those, they're lovely jobs to have in very clean conditions. Ours is a little bit messy, and you have to have a bit of a growl for it. But we have to make it a little bit better, and we have to improve our conditions of work. We have to improve how we develop our people who are in the industry, and we have to keep pushing the bar on sustainability, because that is a message that the younger people today will buy into.
And of course, we need to highlight the fact that it's also very much an entrepreneur's ground. So if you want to own your own business, be it as a tradesman or as a construction company, or the whole shooting shebang pulled together, it's a real opportunity in the construction sector when we've so much potential for us and so much work lying out ahead of us with government funding there going into the future. The final question to you.
Sorry, can I just say that starts in the schools, and the career teachers now need to stop talking to everybody that you need to have a degree. In Germany, if you do an apprenticeship, it's equivalent to a degree in business. They recognize it as an equivalent level of education. In Ireland, it isn't. But we need to really get the career teachers doing that at the very beginning. And the other thing which I think is important, and Tara mentioned it, is the word certainty. One of the things about the construction industry now, there's a feeling of uncertainty following the last recession. So we need to bring back certainty into it. And to do that, we need to stop the boom and bust. So we need to get a consistency of building 30, 35,000 houses per annum, plus or minus 10%, but not plus or minus 80%, which is what happened to us. We were building 70, 80,000 houses and went down to below 10. So we need to get that certainty into the construction industry and show people this is a fantastic industry to join. I mean, I've been in it 40 years, so it's a great industry. Sorry.
And may I add to that, Paddy, the whole desire to bring back and rejuvenate the concept of craftsmanship, true craftsmanship in the construction sector, is really one that should be cherished. It's a word that isn't used enough, and we're losing it along with our craftsmanship skilled people. So we need to look at that area, and now there's a whole new craftsmanship coming with the green agenda and the sustainability, which brings me on to my last question of the panel. Danny, are there barriers to manufacturers bringing greener material to the market? Do you think?
Yeah, I think misunderstanding again, Breed. You know, we have the methodologies for measuring the credentials both of buildings and of products, but we could fall into the trap of greenwash very easily. As Paul alluded to, bringing in materials from abroad and using an EPD that's produced in Scandinavia is not applicable to Ireland. An EPD, you know, a life cycle analysis of a building, about 40% of the carbon is on the materials themselves. The rest of it is on transport, it's on maintenance, etc., etc. So I think that the barriers really is misunderstanding and good third-party certification. I think collaboration between the likes of all of us on this seminar, with the designers and with the builders and with the young guys and young girls on site, is where we're going to win. Really is collaboration.
A couple of questions in from the general public and listeners, the audience. Are 30,000 houses enough to meet the demand for the new homes long term? Well, I think I can answer that and say it isn't. But if we could get 30,000, we'd be thrilled with ourselves. But I think the real goal is 50. Am I right in saying that, panel? Tara?
Yeah, I mean, I just come in on that one, Breed. I mean, you know, we've got, like, with anything, you know, if you have an elephant, you've got to eat the elephant in bite-sized chunks. But, you know, we've got to take a big chunk up front very quickly. I mean, that will take the sting out of the demand that's out there and bring house pricing down. So we should be aiming for 50,000 per year in the first 2 or 3 years of the plan, not scaling up. Like, we really need to get up to and aim for 50,000. Now, if we're aiming for 50,000, we might hit 40,000 and so on. It's still going to be better and that. So I really think that we do need to increase our targets around that.
And how long do you think the Help to Buy scheme will be extended to, Paddy, on that?
Oh, I have no idea on that. I'm not a politician. You know, there are pros and cons for the Help to Buy scheme, and it has certainly worked in the UK very, very well, and it has certainly worked here in the last number of years. But there will be pressure to take it away, especially as the prices of houses are rising. It's down to affordability, so it needs to stay to keep the affordability there. So, you know, that will be a government decision, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of people lobbying for it, and there will be other people lobbying against. Personally, I keep it, and I think it should be there for at least the first 3 years of this new plan to encourage people to buy new homes and make them affordable, particularly now with prices of raw materials rising. And, you know, we take Paul's word that it's going to take 3-4 years before the prices begin to really balance themselves back down again.
And a final question from the public. In terms of delivering over 30,000 houses per annum, what role do you think off-site will play? Timber frame is well accepted, but will steel frame 3D take off in the new residential plannings, do you think?
I can give you some insight on that, because ETEX bought a company called Horizon in Care, and you know, I think timber frame is going to be bigger for the next 3 or 4 years. This goes back to Danny's point. We need to be open to new technology and new ways of construction, and steel frame buildings is one of those. But you know, timber as well. So offsite construction will grow. There is no doubt about that. I think it has to grow to meet the demand. And if we're going to get up to 45,000 houses, we will not do that with only traditional methods. And I think there's a place for everything. I think there is a place for timber construction, steel construction, and the traditional construction. I think there's a place for everything, and there's a demand for a combination of that to hit the figure that we require. But there are bigger issues, and the bigger issues to me are the ones that Tara mentioned, like planning and infrastructure. If we don't get those right, we won't be able to build those houses. If we can't get the planning working much faster, it's going to delay the whole process. And someone asked the question, how many houses do we need? Certainly more than 30,000 houses. Certainly Paul is right. But if we front load it and we're not able, if we try to front load it and we're not able to do it, it could be worse. And going back to the certainty for everybody, I think if we could get 35,000 houses for the next 10 years, I think all manufacturers, all builders, all supply chain people will be much happier.
Okay, so very quickly, I suppose I'm just going to do a roundup of this morning before we try the video. In the event I can't get the video to play out, we will send it to everybody as a link from who's registered for the event this morning. Just a quick roundup and make sure I haven't missed anything, because this paper is going to go back into the Minister for Housing in terms of the support that's coming and the feedback, because in fairness, I saw the video last night late, and the Minister is looking for feedback from the construction sector. He's determined to deliver these houses. He's under enormous pressure, we all know that. And I suppose our job in the construction sector, and certainly here in Guaranteed Irish, is to support him to deliver that. It will support our businesses and keep our jobs here in our local communities alive. In terms of going forward, I suppose the big thing is that the plan is welcomed. That's the first thing that's really been helped. I liked Tara's point that we had to look at the area of concerns, particularly planning, infrastructure, efficiency and certainty to planning, and that to come through, and for the zone of infrastructure for the construction sector also to be looked at. I'm really listening to your points, Paul, in terms of the shortages in terms of labour, and also the barriers in terms of labour, which include the PUP payment, the reluctance for the sector to go back into the workplace because they're on the PUP payment, and that needs to be looked at. And we're not saying for people in every sector to come off the PUP payment. Guaranteed Irish or the panel are not saying that today. We're saying within reason the construction sector is crumbling, it needs its people back. Places like the hospitality and tourism sector needs it, and we really acknowledge that. So not for us to be misquoted out there, but certainly a point that we want to make clear. In terms of the 10,000 construction sectors that they'd like to get off the PUP, there's another 10,000 stuck in a trade void where they can't move on with their apprenticeship. We need to look at that. And we also need to look at the speeding and the efficiencies of the department in relation to expediting the release of those licenses across the felling situation for our wood providers and our sawmills out there, all of them. We've mentioned one, but there are many, and they're all suffering the same fate. So in terms of the pricing then, one of the points that came up was for a block which had gone from 1 to 125 to 250, nearly €3, we're doubling or tripling our costs, and we've got to look at that. How do we keep our trade and our industry here at home? How do we keep it attractive in terms of our cost of living, our housing for them alone, the irony of all of that, and then how do we fight off the competition coming from the UK and other markets. Now, we don't have the same visa issues that Britain is currently experiencing, and we know they're looking at that. So we need to be faster, we need to be agile in terms of attracting people from other markets over here to fill the gap that we need. If we're aiming for 30,000, we're saying we really should be trying to get to the 50,000. And in terms of keeping it sustainable, we really need to look at the sustainable options that Danny has alluded to quite a lot in terms of both the mindset of our young people and to meet those needs, but also to meet the NZ demands of that buildings now are required to have. So we have to achieve that. In terms of, I suppose, going forward, we need to look at the whole embodiment of that decarbonisation piece. And I'm delighted to say we have another event coming up next month on decarbonisation. So do look at the events section on Guaranteed Irish. For every, I suppose, the big area there from Danny is really about making sure that we're looking at opportunities where we can build it in at every step in the stage of the production. So that's a huge help. And I suppose the final piece is the certainty. I think that you've all alluded to that in relation to collaboration and looking between the industry itself, but how can we create certainty around the sector to steady things down, to steady the employees, to steady the workforce, to steady the productivity, and to steady the costs. And a huge need for versatility, I suppose, and flexibility when we're dealing with government contracts and tenders, because obviously that's a huge thing, that's a moving sandpiece. And I know that you know we can't go to government and say, can we go back and change our prices, because that's just not how the world works. But we have to find some way where we have a solution where there's a bit of give and take, and I suppose that comes from all of us around the table. And an element of trust. Now, Guaranteed Irish, the national symbol of trust, is really important there, and we're not interested in doing, pulling fast ones over the government. We're not interested in that. We're interested in really collaborating, putting our hands out and saying, look, these are the representatives from our sector across all the construction sector industry, from sustainability to from the building, from the supply chain and manufacturing. Let's see how we can actually create a solution here to get where we need to, not just for our businesses, but for society in Ireland. Houses are required. We simply have to get them on the ground. But in terms of our speakers, I'd like to particularly thank you. And I would like to thank the Minister. Under enormous pressure, he put that together for me, because I was really keen that he would connect with our Guaranteed Irish, and we do feel he's listening to us. So the feedback from today will reach his office. I'm sure of that, and we will get some feedback from him in due course after that. We'll get that out to you as well. But rest assured, the connection has been made, and he is very keen that the Guaranteed Irish construction sector continues to go and grow. He's very much behind it. He launched the Guaranteed Irish House concept last year about the short supply and opportunities and taking them for our construction sector here in Ireland. So please keep up the good work, and keep pushing the Guaranteed Irish House amongst you and your suppliers, and let's get the supply chain really supported here in Ireland. Again, thank you to my speakers, and I'll be in touch with you by email on the follow-up. Thank you so much, everybody, and good morning.